Right. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the public information meeting on the complete application for site certificate for the Sunstone Solar Project. I'll note that we are both in person here in Boardman tonight as well as online. And this meeting is being recorded. We'll go ahead and post a copy of the recording to our website in the next few days. So anybody that's not here can listen to the discussion, and anybody who is here can listen again if they want. My name is Christopher Clark. I'm a senior siting analyst with the Oregon Department of Energy. I will be facilitating the review of the application for site certificate. We're joined here tonight also by the Pine Gate Renewables team, who's the developer of this project. I'll introduce themselves in a little bit after my presentation. Yeah, and if Nancy, you could go to the next slide. I'll give us a quick rundown of what we will be talking about tonight. First, we just had a meet and greet, so thanks to everybody for coming out, and I hope you got some good discussion in with the applicant team and us at the department. If you didn't get a chance, I did just want to point out that we have a computer set up towards the door where you can sign up for email updates from the department. You can preview our ARESA mapping tool, which I'll give a little bit of a overview of in a minute. And you can also see just other information about the Energy Facility Siting Council and the work it's doing there. I'll be going over that a little bit in our presentation as well. So I will be providing a quick overview of the energy facility siting process, which is the state level permitting review. I'll also be giving, as I just mentioned, an introduction over the Oregon Renewable Energy Siting Assessment Tool, or ARESA, which is a good publicly accessible mapping tool, so you can see some more details about this project and other energy facilities. I'll then be turning it over to the applicant team to give a more detailed overview of this Sunstone Solar Project. And then we'll be taking questions and answers from the audience, both people that are here in person with us today and those on the webinar. All right. So the Energy Facility Siting Council review process is a consolidated review and oversight process for most large-scale energy facilities and infrastructure in Oregon. In addition to solar facilities, the council, or FSEC, has jurisdiction over large-scale wind facilities, large thermal projects, some transmission lines, and some pipelines. The council is made up of 7 volunteers from around the state. They are appointed by the governor and confirmed by the Senate. And ODO's siting division, so ODO, the Oregon Department of Energy siting division, is staffed to FSEC. And I do want to point out before we get going that we do have at least one council member in the room with us, Councilmember Imes, and I believe we have Councilmember Byer joining us on the webinar as well. Thank you both for being here. We really appreciate it. So next slide. So what the council does is review typically applications for site certificate, which is the request for the state level permit for a large energy facility, or request for amendment of a site certificate, which is another administrative process. In the application for site certificate process, there's 7 major steps. Some of you may have been out here, maybe Logan remembers better than I do, a year ago, 2 years ago, when we had a similar meeting as tonight on the notice of intent, 2 years ago. All right, which the notice of intent is the first document that the department receives. It gives the applicants kind of general proposal for an energy facility and gives the department the chance to establish the legal standards, applicable laws and rules that would apply to that review. Which we put in a project order, which you'll see noted as the second step. The applicant responds to all of the information requests in the project order, as well as the other information requests in our administrative rules in their application for site certificate, or ASC. That's the process we're in, or the part of the process we're in now. The application contains A lot of information. It is available on our website. I'll talk a little bit more about what's in there more specifically. But there are a number of exhibits talking about everything from land use to fish and wildlife habitat to cultural resources. So if you have specific questions about this project or what resources it might impact, most of the answers should be there. And if you ever need help navigating that, you can find information for my information on our project page. You can also find the applicant's information if you have questions for them. After the ASC, the department will, after we review the ASC, the department will prepare what's called a draft proposed order. I'll get into a little more detail about what that entails in later slides, but generally the draft proposed order is the department's initial findings of fact and recommended conclusions of law and recommendations, other recommendations of the council on whether or not the facility would comply with all the applicable requirements and whether or not we recommend that the council should issue a site certificate. There is a public comment process associated with the draft proposed order. Members of the public can submit public comments both on what's in the DPO or the draft proposed order and on the application itself. And it's important to note that to preserve your standing or to preserve the ability to participate later in the process, if there's a contested case, you must comment on the DPO during that comment period. So I'll bring that point up several times just because it's very, I think, important if you're interested in participating in this process. So after the comment period's over, the department will present its recommendations and all the comments to the council, and then we'll prepare a proposed order. And along with that proposed order will come a notice of contested case where people, if they disagree with our recommendations, can request a contested case hearing on issues. Again, I'll just repeat that only persons who raise a relevant issue in person at the public hearing in writing by the comment deadline on the DPO may participate in that contested case. And that process is run by an independent hearing officer that's appointed by the council. Usually that's somebody from the Oregon Office of Administrative Hearings, but it could be another third party or a council member. So after the contested case proceeding is done or has run its case, or if there's no issues, kind of immediately the council or FSEC will be reviewing the proposed order, the information in the ASC, and making their final decision on whether they will approve or deny the application for site certificate. Okay. Okay, so just to show kind of how this facility or this project has worked. So yeah, as I mentioned, we got the notice of intent in 2022, and we again had the informational meeting out here at that time. We issued a project order that September, and then got the preliminary application for site certificate in just about a year ago in June of 2023. The department has consulted with our other agency partners, tribal governments and local governments, to make sure that the information in that preliminary application was complete and contained sufficient information for us to recommend findings to the council on all the applicable laws, rules, and standards. The applicant responded to all those requests and issued their complete application just last month on May, which is the application that contains all the information that the department determined would be sufficient for us to recommend findings. So from this point on, we are a little speculative on our timeline, but our best guess at this point is that we'll be issuing that draft proposed order in June or July, so towards the end of the month or early next month. And at that time, we'll be issuing a public notice that contains more information about the public comment period, how you can comment. I'll be showing again how to sign up for updates, but if you are interested in receiving that notice, we do recommend that you sign up to get those updates for when that comes out, because it is very important. We'll be having a public hearing on the DPO back here in this area, so likely in Morrow County, either here in Boardman or another local community. We're right now anticipating that to be in August, but that could change. So again, please do sign up for updates if you'd like to know more. And then from there, the process will continue kind of based on the level of participation we receive and the council schedule as well. I will let the experts in the room give you really the details about the project itself, but just so we all know why we're here, the Sunstone project is a proposed solar facility that would be have up to 1.2 gigawatts of generating capacity, 7.2 gigawatt hours of battery storage, 6 collector substations and an interconnection substation, up to 4 O&M buildings, and 9.5 miles of overhead transmission line. And then I noticed that I didn't finish filling out my slide, and so I figured I might pop quiz you all, but I do have the answer. It would be up to 55 miles of access roads and 58 miles of perimeter fencing. I think those are a lot of pieces, but one of the things that people are most interested in are kind of what is the overall footprint of this. And according to the application, the facility would occupy up to 9,442 acres of EFU land, exclusive farm use land, within an approximately 10,960 acre site. Great. So as I mentioned, for that facility and all of its impacts, we believe that we do currently have adequate information for the council to make findings or impose conditions on all applicable council standards. Again, we encourage all the members of the public to review the complete application as well and let us know if you think we missed something or the applicant missed something. Again, we will be relying on the information in the application to draft findings and recommendations for the council's review in the draft proposed order. And just as a note, just because we've determined that application to be complete doesn't mean necessarily that we will be recommending approval of the project. And it especially doesn't mean that the council has taken any action on the project itself. So the complete application doesn't mean approval. It's just one of the procedural steps on the way of the review process. Okay, so to get the council's approval, every project has to meet the same 14 general standards. I won't go over them all here. This slide is really just to illustrate that the applicant has a pretty high evidentiary burden. They have a lot of exhibits they have to meet, and not all of those are exactly lined up with the standards. So as you are thinking about this or exploring the information in the record on our website, keep in mind that one exhibit, like a fish and wildlife exhibit, may have information about other things like soils or revegetation, or may connect to things about threatened and endangered species. Yeah, and I won't belabor this too much more, but it is good to keep in mind. Great. Next slide, please. Okay, and then, yeah, again, we are currently in the process of drafting our draft proposed order, which will contain the department's recommended findings of compliance or non-compliance with the siting standards, as well as the conditions and recommended conditions of approval that the council should impose under each one of those standards. And as I mentioned, there will be a comment period and a public hearing associated with that draft proposed order. That the intention of that hearing is to allow anyone to comment on whether staff's initial recommendations are correct. And it is really a fairly open thing. That hearing will be, the oral hearing will be conducted by a hearing officer. And again, it's very important that if you do have an issue with the project or you do disagree with the findings, that you comment during that comment period to preserve your ability to participate later in the process. When we get there, if you want to participate, you can do so in a number of ways. We have an online comment portal, which I'll kind of give an overview of how to get onto in a second. You can also mail comments in, you can email them in, you can hand deliver them to our office in Salem if you happen to be in the area, or to one of us if we're out in this area. And you can also fax things in. And then we will again be out in this area again to accept comments in person if you'd like to address the council directly. Okay, and again, just more procedural information. So only persons commenting on the DPO are eligible to be considered for party status in the contested case proceeding. And once the hearing record closes, the council will not accept any more comments. So it is a tight, uh, relatively tight record. So once it's closed, it's closed. If you, again, are taking an issue with the project and you want to be considered in a contested case proceeding, just keep in mind that issues must be raised with what's called sufficient specificity. And that just means that there's enough specificity that the council, the department, and the applicant understand the issue raised and are afforded an opportunity to respond to their issue. And if you are raising an issue with sufficient specificity, you must also present facts that support that position on the issue in your comments. Generally, to be more effective with your comments and to really help the council understand what your issue is and what you want them to do, it's helpful to reference specific standards and provide specific information supporting whether or not a standard has been met, to really add what you believe the supporting facts are. And if you want to include any outside sources, to just include those sources themselves, rather than referencing something. And then be very specific about what you're taking issue with. If it's a department recommendation, point out the page that that's on, or the specific standard that you're taking issue with. Less effective comments, but still accepted, obviously, and considered, are comments that just generally state support or opposition to a project. Materials that are submitted kind of without context. So if you have a study that you think is really important for us to read, but you don't explain why, we might not know what to do with it or might misinterpret what your intention was. Raising issues outside of the council's jurisdiction. So the Energy Facility Siting Council doesn't have jurisdiction over a number of things, including employment laws or property rights or building codes. So those sorts of things, while I think it's good for the applicant team to hear if you have either are in favor or against something, it's not something that the council can really act on if it's not in their jurisdiction. And then again, making unsubstantiated comments. Okay, so that's my kind of spiel in the process, and I hope I kept you all awake. Good, seeing some nods. And hopefully the folks at home are also still with us. So I just want to go over some of the tools and resources that are on our website that might help you participate in a process or get more information about the project. The main place to go to for information about this project is the project page on our website. There's a link here. There should have also been a link in the notice to this meeting if you're looking for it. So there is a copy of the application there. Information about meetings or upcoming hearings will be posted there. A general status and overview of the project and where the department's at in our review. And then contact information for myself and for the applicant team. On the right-hand side, you'll see there's the green button, which you can use to sign up to get updates, like I mentioned before. That'll take you to a general sign up page. I just did want to highlight, you can see there's an arrow pointing to a slider on that page. You do have to unlock to make sure that your information can be submitted. Some people do have an issue where that slider doesn't show up and there's some instructions above there. So yeah, it's frustrating if there's IT issues, and that's one that we know has come up. I've shown the first kind of page that shows up will have a lot of different things for the department, a lot of different topics. As you get down to the bottom, there'll be a place to sign up for Energy Facility Siting Council updates specifically. And then if you hit the continue button, next slide, you'll get taken to a list of projects. And if you scroll down, you'll find the Sunstone Solar project on that list. Great. not on the project page, but on the council's webpage more generally. There's also a lot of helpful resources. There's a place to provide comments when the DPO public comment period is open. I'll give a more thorough walkthrough on how to do that in just a second. There's also a lot of guides, public guides, and reports that might be helpful for understanding our process if I didn't do an amazing job explaining it tonight. You can also find just general information about council meetings, rulemaking activity, other projects, and lots of other stuff that the department's doing as well on that page. Okay, so I will try not to belabor this tutorial too much, but again, since public comments are really important and we do really appreciate them, we did just want to give a quick demo of how to submit comments using our portal. So I showed on the other page that there is a place to click to how to submit comments from the council's webpage, but you can also go to this website, which is our comment portal page. From this page, and if I can get the next slide, there'll be a little menu on the top that says submit a comment, and you can click on that and then click on energy facility siting to get to how to submit a comment for a energy facility siting project. Once you do that, you'll be brought to a menu, a drop-down menu that will have a lot of different projects on it. Just keep in mind that only projects with an open comment period will show up there. So if you don't see Sunstone and you think it should be on there because you've got a notice that says it should be on there, let us know. But it might have already closed. So that's just important to know. So select the project that you want to comment on, and then click next. And you'll get some more information about the portal, which you can read, but we can't read now. So click next. And then one more slide, Nancy. So yeah, you'll get, again, more information about the project that you wish to comment on that you've selected. So you know you're commenting on the right thing. Go to one more slide. Okay, yeah, and then here you'll get to the part where you can actually provide your comment. So if you can enter your name and contact information, click create. Sorry, oh yeah, and you can go to the next slide. One more. And then there'll be a place to fill out the comment form. And I think what's important to note about the comment form is that there'll be an option to select the standard or section that you want to comment on. Again, the more specific you can be, the more helpful for us. We do recommend, oh, and if you can go to the next slide, I guess. We do recommend that if you're writing longer comments or more complicated comments with lots of pages, you might want to do it in a separate document first and then just copy and paste into this form. There's also, if you prefer to not go through this whole process, you can just type up a separate document and then attach it. And once you do that, you hit submit and your comment should be submitted. You should get a copy or a confirmation immediately after. So great. Great. So that's the public comment form. And so, sorry, a little dry, but I think another feature of the website is that there is a place to see all the comments that have been submitted on the website. From that same beginning page, you can go to where it says see comments submitted and hit the citing docket. And that should take you to every comment that's been received there. So if you're interested in what other people are saying, you should be able to find that information. Okay, so similarly, we do have a mapping tool that is pretty helpful, and we had hoped to have a video for you all, but I don't think we do. Okay, so similarly, and we can go to this pretty quickly. Yeah, you'll start at the Odo website and go to where it says facilities under FSEC. And then can go, oh, actually, Nancy, is that little video down at the bottom, that little video camera, will that bring up the video?
Oh, no.
Nope, that's for the webinar. Okay, well, shoot. Okay, so you can pick a project that you're interested in learning more about. And on that project page, if you can go to the next slide, there'll be a subheading that says location and a online map and a physical map. So if you just want to see a PDF, that's available. But if you want to see an online interactive map, click online map and the Aresta tool will pop up. When you get there that way, you'll be limited to just seeing layers related to FSEC facilities. So you can use that left-hand menu to navigate the layers. And then you can use the little plus sign to expand that list so you can get all sorts of different kinds of layers, including all state level available layers from ODFW, the Department of Fish and Wildlife, the Department of Land and Land Conservation and Development, and other agencies. So to see, oh, and if you go one more, oh, you're there. Thank you, Nancy. Yeah, and then if you're looking for a specific layer, if you could go one more thing, you can use the drop-down menu to either search, again, and if you choose all available layers, they will all pop up. And you can also search in a search bar there. Okay, I'm going to have you flip through a few of these until you get to the one that says adding in FSEC layer options. Oh, okay. Okay, so if you want to see, if you get to the map a different way and you want to see all the FSEC facilities, you can choose the energy group and then scroll down and choose Odo Facilities Database and then click the Oregon Energy Facility Siting Council facilities layer, which will show you the layers of all the facilities on the map that you have shown. That would include this facility and all of them that are on the map. You can then change a lot of the visual features of that. You can change the transparency by using a slider. You can go ahead and click through two of these slides. You can change the base map if you want to see topographic relief or roads or something like that. One more. Slide. Yeah, so you can change the base map. And then if you can go two more slides, you can also view the attribute data to get information about how many megawatts a facility is expected to generate, what the size is, where it's located, and etc. by clicking view additional details. All right, and then one last feature we wanted to show you. Often people, and if you could go, I think it's two more. Oh, right here, perfect. A lot of times people are interested in how close is this to my house, or how close is this to a road that I use or a park that I like to visit. And so there is a measurement tool built in. You can see where it's highlighted. There's also sometimes a little toolbox on the right side where you can get a measuring tape and measure from point to point to see your site boundary. And that'll give you in the measurement of your choice. I went through this kind of quickly. I did want to point out these slides will be posted to our website. So if you want to revisit them, if you're trying to use the tool, you can get that tutorial. Also, we do have the Aresta tool pulled up on the computer over there. So if you want an in-person demo, we'd be happy to provide that after the meeting. Okay, and that's probably enough talking for me. Thank you all for bearing with me. So again, this is my contact information. I'll show it at the end, and I will turn it over to the Sunstone team or the Pine Gate team to give an overview of the project.
Hello. Hello. Can you hear me? Okay, great. Thank you, Chris, and thank you to the department for organizing this event and allowing us to participate and share some additional information about the proposed project. Thanks to everyone in the room who came out and joined us tonight, as well as all the folks on the phone. We appreciate it and look forward to having a good discussion with you. My name is Logan Stevens. I'm VP of Project Development at Pine Gate Renewables. Pine Gate is the sponsor, owner, developer of the Sunstone Solar Project. By way of background, I started my career in utility scale solar development back in 2011, and my current role at Pine Gate involves leading our Western development team, active across multiple states in the region, as well as personally leading the Sunstone development effort with support from a ton of folks, some of whom are here tonight. Next slide, please. Joined tonight by a few colleagues. Nikki Olson is our Senior Manager of Stakeholder Relations at Pine Gate. Linnea Fossum, Northwest Energy Lead at Tetra Tech. Ariel Stavitsky, attorney at Stoll Reeves. Jeff Box, energy consultant with Box Energy Strategies. And David Weiss, I believe, is on the phone. He's our Vice President of Project Delivery, whose team will be involved in actually constructing the project once it's approved. So just to say as well, each of the folks I mentioned, as well as many others inside of Pine Gate and at our consulting firms, have been involved in the development effort and crafting the application that's been finalized and is in front of the department now. For the next 20 minutes or so, I'm going to give a very high-level overview of the project and kind of highlight some of the key sections of the application, and then the whole team will be available to help answer any questions at the end. A bit of background on Pine Gate. So we're a privately held American company founded in 2016. Our headquarters is in Asheville, North Carolina, but we're kind of spread all over the country. We're actively developing in 30 plus states. We have close to 300 full-time employees, extensive experience developing, financing, constructing, and operating facilities of this type. And we have a legacy of success in Oregon as well, with 17 operating facilities here in the state. Next slide. So throughout the development process, we've been really committed to being a good community member and engaging early and often with a variety of different groups. Some of those are represented here on the slide. And we plan to continue those engagement efforts throughout the remainder of the permitting process and as we move into construction and ultimately into the operational phase as well. As I mentioned, Nikki is our stakeholder relations lead, and she'd be glad to meet you if we haven't had the chance to connect with you already. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time on this slide, and some of this may be duplicative with what Chris already covered, and apologies for that, but we'll just run through it one more time. So we began developing the project back in 2021. It was previously called Bombing Range Solar and then Echo Solar, and we ultimately landed on Sunstone Solar, which is after the state gemstone of Oregon. We don't plan on changing the name again. This is a solar generation facility with potential battery energy storage component as well. The maximum facility output will be 1,200 megawatts. The largest anticipated footprint will be 9,442 acres. And we're going to be interconnecting the project to existing infrastructure owned by Umatilla Electric Co-op and Bonneville Power Administration. So we'll have some maps to kind of point out those infrastructure points here in just a minute. But important just to note that the project is not going to require any new transmission corridors outside of the project boundary. We'll be able to interconnect right on site. And also that we will not be interconnecting the project to the proposed Boardman to Hemingway project, even though we're in close proximity to that corridor. The project is expected to be constructed in phases over a period of about 4 years from 2026 to 2029. So we'll talk a little bit more about what that looks like when we get to those slides. And once the project is interconnected and operating, the power that's generated is going to flow to the Umatilla Electric Co-op and BPA regional transmission systems, and will help meet the rising demand for clean energy in this region. Also wanted to mention that we do have a pilot agreement, which stands for payment in lieu of tax. We negotiated that with Morrow County a couple of years ago now, and it provides for $7,000 per megawatt per year of payments to the county in lieu of normal taxation. And that's for a period of 17 operational years. For the balance of the 40-year life of the facility, it will be taxed under the normal tax regime. And when you model all of that out, we anticipate that it will generate approximately $376 million to the county over the life of the facility. So I'm going to show 3 maps here. These are available in the application in Exhibit C. First one is kind of all the way zoomed out, showing the site boundary inside the purple there, located just on the southeast corner of the bombing range. And it's roughly halfway between Heppner and Boardman. Great. This map is a little more zoomed in and shows all of the existing and proposed energy facilities within a 10-mile distance of the site boundary. So you can see there's a lot of existing and proposed wind and solar and other types of infrastructure in the area, as well as a lot of existing and proposed transmission lines. So this project kind of fits right into that mix in a corridor that's already pretty active with this type of development. Now all the way zoomed in to see the proposed facility layout, including the site boundary, some of the key components that Chris mentioned early on in his presentation in terms of fence lines, O&M areas, laydown yards, etc. We do have a copy of this map over here on a board if anyone wants to come over and take a look at it with us after the presentation. The point of interconnection with the UEC system will be in the northwest corner of the site. If you see the dotted blue line coming down from the north, that's the existing transmission line that will physically connect the facility to. And then there's a few areas marked in red that are excluded from development. So there's a couple of tracts that the participating landowners are going to continue to farm. There's the Sand Hollow area that runs north-south, kind of in the middle of the proposed site. And then a few other areas that are excluded as well. Sorry, just to mention as well, up in that northwest corner where we plan to interconnect the facility is likely where construction will start. And as it's built out in phases, it'll sort of propagate from there and get built out towards the southeast. Also, sorry, one more thing. I mentioned the B2H, the Boardman to Hemingway line corridor, which is proposed. So that cuts through the field all the way at the west. It runs due north-south. It then comes down and cuts through the project's site, kind of, I don't know, 2/3 of the way down. Be happy to point that out in more detail to anyone that wants to take a look at it with us afterwards. But again, just to reiterate, we won't be interconnecting to that line. That line is essentially an obstacle for us that we're working around, and we'll have some crossing agreements to go underneath as needed. So wanted to provide just a really quick rundown on how a solar facility works for folks that may not be familiar. So you can kind of follow this slide from left to right. So starting with the sun, obviously, and then the solar modules or panels, as they're sometimes called, are really the star of the show here. These are primarily silicon-based technology, about the size of a large TV screen. And these days, they actually collect sunlight on both the front and the back for a little extra juice on the backside. And the output of the solar modules is DC electricity. So that DC electricity is what ultimately feeds back into the inverters, gets changed into AC electricity. There's a couple of iterations of transformers to step up the voltage to get it to match the voltage of the transmission system that we're connecting to. The modules themselves will be mounted on steel racking, which in this case, we're proposing a single axis tracking system. So that racking will actually start out in the morning facing east. It'll rotate throughout the day, end up facing west, follow the sun, maximize the production, and then reset at the end of the day. I mentioned the potential battery storage components of the facility. So more than likely, those will sit on the AC side of the inverters and will be designed to collect and store electricity that's generated by the facility so that it can be dispatched on demand if the customer needs it at a certain time, or potentially moved around during the day to more accurately meet the demand in the region. In the application, we've proposed two different battery storage technology types. One is lithium ion, which is probably the most common technology in the market right now. We've also proposed a zinc air solution that has some benefits, but is a little bit of a newer technology. Chris covered this a bit already, but just to highlight again, all of the studies that were completed during the development phase of the project and are included in the application. For example, the wetland delineation report can be found in Exhibit J, Attachment 1, economic impact analysis in Exhibit K, Attachment 2, et cetera. So you can follow that list down, and all of these studies are available inside the application materials that are available on the FSEC website. Alongside the studies, we've also drafted a number of plans to address different impacts from the facility and different aspects of the construction and O&M process. I won't read all of these out to you, but they touch on a number of themes from dust control, weed control, agricultural mitigation, habitat mitigation, construction traffic, wildfire mitigation, et cetera. And again, just following the same nomenclature there, that'll guide you to where you can find it inside the application. So really throughout the development process of the facility so far, we've been really focused on land use and siting considerations. And just to highlight a few of those that are described in great detail in the application, particularly in Exhibit K, we've worked to site the facility near existing transmission lines and infrastructure, like we talked about. The footprint of the facility is pretty much exclusively located on land that's used for dryland wheat production, and it's all inside the Butter Creek critical groundwater area. We've worked hard to make sure the proposed project will not impact or displace irrigated agricultural uses, and we're working to preserve existing area water resources as well. Lastly, the facility has been designed to avoid what little high value wildlife habitat was surveyed in the area. And, we think we'll be able to completely avoid impacting those areas. And if we do have to impact any, there's some mitigation proposed with a third party to address that. So in addition to the other impacts that I just mentioned, the impact on agricultural land has been a really key consideration. This was identified early on in our engagement with local stakeholders as a key issue. So we hired a third-party firm called Eco Northwest to do some pretty detailed economic modeling to determine the direct, indirect, and induced economic impacts that the facility may have on the local agricultural economy. And then we took that information and we worked collaboratively with Morrow County and with other ag stakeholders to come up with a pretty unique agricultural mitigation plan to address those impacts. This includes the creation of a agricultural mitigation fund and an agreement with Morrow County to establish the fund and create an advisory committee to administer that. And the idea is that when we start construction of the facility, we will be committed to paying money into this fund, and that those funds will ultimately go to benefit dryland wheat projects in the county or the agricultural economy more generally. And lastly, we have committed in our application to continue our engagement with neighbors around the project who may, feel impacts from the facility when it comes to traffic or dust control or other things, and want to make sure that we're taking their farming operations into account as we're planning for the construction and operation of our facility, and make every accommodation we can to avoid having those impacts. Chris pretty much covered this already, but just to point out again, we're currently in the public information meeting phase of the permitting process here. We anticipate receiving the site certificate in a few months, and then we'll probably spend the entirety of 2025 kind of in pre-construction planning phase, getting all of our final designs, working through the final iterations of our mitigation plans, arranging financing, ordering equipment, hiring contractors, et cetera. It's a pretty big undertaking to gear up a project of this scale. And then, like I said before, we anticipate constructing the project in phases over a period of roughly 4 years from 2026 to 2029. And if you go to the next slide, there's just a little bit more detail. So the top chart here, and this is included in the application as well, the different colors represent different construction phases. And then the chart below, this corresponding colors reflect the estimated construction worker headcount that will go with those phases. So you can see we kind of have overlapping phases through time, construction on those phases ramping up and ramping down. And it all kind of balances out to a fairly smooth ramp up, plateau, and then ramp back down sort of feel to it. And this helps with planning. It helps with making sure that there's adequate housing and that we're not kind of in a constant up and down flow of construction workers coming in and out. Also important to note that this represents the estimated construction headcount for the full proposed design, including all of the potential battery storage. If we end up not having battery storage on the project, we expect these numbers will go down by about 200. So instead of plateauing at around 900, maybe we're plateauing around 700. Again, many details are available in the application, but we just wanted to highlight a few key construction considerations that have been described and addressed in some detail. Everything from vegetation management, what kind of ground cover is going to be planted, how it's going to be managed, water use and water sourcing, where are we going to get the water from, how are we going to use it, how are we going to preserve those ag water resources in the area, dust and weed control, and working with the Morrow Soil and Water Conservation District has been a big benefit for us to learn from the experience of the Wheat Ridge facility, which is operating right next door, and figuring out some best practices that we can implement on our project. There's going to be some limitations on working hours that we expect to be as a condition in the site certificate. Workforce housing is a key consideration, and we've been engaging with stakeholders to try to find solutions for that and make sure the housing is there when it's needed. Traffic management includes a transportation plan, a road use agreement with the county, make sure that all of those roads are well taken care of and able to support what we need to do. Safety is obviously a big concern. So addressing, best practices for everything from fuel and chemical storage, fire prevention and control, and what do we do if we discover something on the site that we didn't know was there, making sure that those processes and procedures are in place. So again, this is just a sample, and there's tons of detail in the application, and if folks have questions, we'd be happy to dig into it a bit and get into more detail. With that, I'll just say thank you, and looks like Chris is going to open the floor for questions, and we have plenty of microphones up here, and look forward to answering as many questions as we can. Thank you.
Thanks, Logan. Yes. So, we'll go ahead and take any questions or comments from people in the audience. We'll also, I'm going to go ahead and take questions from people in the room first, and then people online. So up on the side, you'll see instructions for if you're online and you do want to comment, please raise your hand. There's a small pane on the bottom right hand of the main window that says participants. Go ahead and click on that, and then you should see a little hand icon. Click on that. Do we have anybody just called in on the phone? Okay, so we have some call-in phone users as well. If you'd like to raise your hand on the phone, just press *3, and then after we call on you and you make your comment, press *3 again, and that'll lower your hand. With that, is there anybody here in the room that has a question? I'll be fielding questions about the FSEC process, and we'll refer over to the applicant team. And go ahead and come on up. Yeah, if you don't mind, just so everyone can hear you.
Thank you so much. I'm Daisy Goebel, and I'm with the Morrow County Planning Department. And I wanted to say first and foremost that your team has been really excellent to work with, and we're very impressed with your agricultural mitigation plan. We have started to see a lot more of these large and small scale solar projects, and we feel that your team's just really set a very high bar for what we need to be expecting from agricultural mitigation. We feel that you guys have demonstrated just a great perspective of the importance and the value of our ag land. So we really appreciate that. We appreciate the effort over years that your team's put into it. So thank you so much for that. We've only just started reviewing your materials, and we're looking forward to providing comments during the FSEC process. And a few questions off from the start, that this isn't necessarily tied directly to the ag plan, but for weed mitigation, we're wondering if you guys have contemplated the use of agrivoltaics for weed management and vegetative management, as well as soil impacts. Thank you.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for the compliment, and likewise, it's been great working with the planning department and with the county officials in general. So thank you. I guess I can maybe start an answer to that and then maybe hand it off to some other folks. But we did look early on at the opportunity to put sheep inside the facility. Obviously, comes with its own set of challenges, especially at scale. We're certainly open to considering kind of agrivoltaic solutions, even though that's an emerging field in the industry. But for now, what we've proposed in the application is to use more traditional vegetation management, and again, working with stakeholders who have been involved in other solar facilities in the county and learning from those best practices. So, anything you want to add to that, Linnea? Or
I think just on the sheep piece, is a project of this scale is there's a lot of water demand for sheep. And if you had enough sheep to actually maintain all the vegetation at this site, that would also have other unintended consequences that, yeah.
Okay,
And-
thank you.
Lene, maybe if we could just mention the exhibits and attachments for the vegetation plan and the weed control.
Yeah, good point. The Exhibit P has a couple of attachments. There's a revegetation plan that talks about vegetation that will be planted underneath the panels and in between the panels and how that will be managed. So it's important to keep the vegetation at a level where it doesn't shade the panels and also for fire management as well. And then there's a weed management plan. I think revegetation and weed management, I forget which ones are together. But that also addresses making sure that there are not invasive species that are taking over. Yeah.
Thank you so much. I appreciate your response.
Thank you.
Thanks, Daisy. And I'll just jump on to say thanks to everybody at the planning department for being so engaged in the process and the board of commissioners.
And same to the ODO staff as well. Thank you.
Anyone else in the room that'd like to provide a comment? Thanks.
Good evening. I'm Mark Kendall, and I'm a Oregonian and interested in your project. And I am most curious about how the timeline for decision making and what the decision tree looks like on batteries, given this tight FSEC timeline. How do you get an FSEC permit with a battery that is maybe that. I'm curious what the timeline, what the decision tree is on lithium over zinc or what?
Sure. Thank you, Mark. If the current timeline holds that we have shown tonight, we're roughly 2 years from start of construction. Right. So some of those final procurement decisions will be made closer to breaking ground. And in this industry, there's a lot of kind of constantly changing dynamics when it comes to supply chain and availability of equipment, evolutions in technology, et cetera. So I would say, likely over the next year or so, getting into 2025, when we're going through final design and engineering, making those kind of firmer construction plans and contracting decisions is likely when we'll be making those decisions. And with all of that in mind, we attempted to, in our application, preserve a little bit of flexibility for some different technologies, given that it's still a decision that needs to be made closer to start of construction. So I don't know if David Weiss is available to jump in on that and speak a little bit more about the EPC management project delivery team's approach to that.
Sure. Good evening, everyone. I meant to be there in person, but there were some issues in Dallas, Fort Worth. So unfortunately, I'm calling in from Nashville, Music City. But as far as the timeline for how we make that decision, there's a lot of things that go into play. We're still considering both technologies at this point. We have batteries in our fleet, essentially, that we've been operating for a while. So we're well aware of what goes into construction, management, and operation of both types of batteries. So, like Logan says, the decision really falls on, we want to go with the best quality product to provide the best reliable power when called upon from the utility. So we're going to continue those coordinations with the utility, and as they're our customer, that's going to be a big part of the decision.
Okay, good.
Great.
Thank you. I know, just a brief follow-up of what kinds of support are Bonneville Power and Umatilla Electric Co-op looking forward to if you incorporate batteries? What kind of dynamic hour by hour kind of, or next day, or what kind of voltage support or dispatchability, or what are they looking for?
Sure. Well, possibly a mix of a few things that you just mentioned, and I'm going to get out ahead of my over my skis pretty quickly on this subject. But in general, I think you're touching on a important point, which is that the equipment selection, the technology selection, the configuration of the energy storage depends a lot on the customer and who's buying the power and what are they
Right.
looking for. So, you know, we are pursuing interconnection and transmission agreements with UEC and BPA. They will not necessarily be the customer for the project.
Right.
You know, our customers do tend to be utilities or large commercial industrial power users, but as we're still working through trying to get those contracts sorted out, I think that will also inform a lot of
Those will
decisions.
indicate what's being looked for.
Yeah.
Okay, and then, and the FSEC permit process does offer that dynamic,
Yeah.
you know, kind of scope versus specific.
I can
But-
speak to that a little bit. Yeah, so the applicant team, like they mentioned, have asked for flexibility to use multiple different chemistries. So we kind of look at the worst case scenario to determine compliance with the standards and also what the additional conditions of approval would be.
Got
So, for example, we know, lithium ion chemistries can have a little higher fire risk. Just because
Noisier.
of some
Yeah,
thermal.
right.
So we'll look at that for determining compliance with wildfire. They also, I think, typically have bigger HVAC systems, so they might have a little larger noise profile. So we permit to allow them that flexibility to kind of do something less impactful if they want to use a different chemistry. We're technology neutral in that way.
And so as that's developed and built out, will that be published as part of the permit? The more specific data needs and support needs of the buyers?
Right. Maybe the final design I expect will be publicly available.
Yeah, we will require a final site design. So we'll kind of need you to say how many containers and where, and we'll need you to do a final noise analysis.
Some of
But
that
I don't
will
know
be
if we'll get into the really detailed technical engineering or the technical standards, because that's a little outside of what the council looks at.
Right.
But as far as the final permit, we'll have all the different technical conditions and standards that they have to meet regardless of technology.
Yeah. And obviously all of our, you know, supply agreements, our offtake agreements, et cetera, all that's pretty confidential, but
Oh, right. But
I would love to keep a dialogue going with you. I can tell this is a subject that you're passionate
there's
about
some-
and
a
give
general
you as much
level
information
that-
as we're allowed to give. Sure.
good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Thank you so
Good
much.
project.
Right, anyone else in the audience? Questions or general comments? Right, I'll let you think about it a little bit more and see if we have anybody online. Right, Mark Henry, and is he on? Right, Mark Henry, if you're there, please go ahead.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hi, thank you for taking my questions. I'm an industry person. I've studied a lot of different battery chemistries, and I've looked at a lot of public and private companies. Just staying on the topic of battery storage, I guess given the fact that this is going to be a 7 gigawatt hour proposed project, how critical is it that the supplier of the battery energy storage system, whether it be the zinc hybrid or lithium ion, how critical is it that they have the manufacturing capacity to be able to provide 7 gigawatt hours of batteries in the time frame that the project is going to be developed? And just on the notion that lithium ion does propose significant thermal runway and fire risk, how much of that is a decision factor in making a decision of which technology to select it for the project?
Great. Thank you, Mark. This is Logan, and I'll take, I guess, the question in two parts. first of all, the ability of the manufacturers to supply the equipment that's needed for the facility is a very key consideration in the procurement process for us. And to your point, will, you know, influence which provider we go with, which technology we go with, based on kind of those supply chain dynamics that exist when we get to that decision point. On the second question, you know, we have a number of exhibits and attachments in the application that address kind of fire risk, wildfire risk, all the preventative measures that we're going to commit to taking to minimize and contain that risk. And ultimately, you know, we will not be allowed to build a facility that does not comply with the conditions of the site certificate. And we do expect there will be conditions addressing some of those concerns as well. That's about as technical as I can get on it. We'd be happy to get your information and maybe put you in touch with some of our folks to have a deeper discussion. But I don't know if Linnea, if you want to add anything to that tonight.
Just that the fire management plan, yeah, it's called the fire management plan. I'm trying to remember all the titles of it, is an attachment to Exhibit V, as in Victor, of the application. So there's a fair amount of detail, both in the construction and operation, about considerations that will need to be taken to reduce the risk of fire either moving through the facility or, you know, being created by facility construction or operation.
Got it. Thank you so much for your response. Just as one follow-up, in Exhibit B in the application, it shows very clearly that EOS Energy Enterprises seems to be the battery OEM if you guys were to go down the route of selecting the zinc hybrid technology. I just want to confirm whether or not it is in fact EOS Energy as the zinc battery technology, or are there other zinc technologies out there that you guys are considering? I know that Logan had mentioned Zinc Air. I'm not sure if that was a mistake, but is EOS Energy Enterprises the battery OEM? And the reason why I bring that up is they're building out manufacturing capacity in their Turtle Creek facility, which you know would clearly, you know, be suitable for the level of scale needed for the project. So I'm just curious if there can be a comment on that.
Yeah, great question. This is Linnea again. And the application, the way the application is structured in Exhibit B, like boy, because I thought you said V like Victor at the beginning, but Exhibit B includes several examples of, for example, what panels, you know, an example of panels that might be used, and some different figures for what the battery storage technology might look like, just so that you can get an idea of how the project would look and what kinds of technology might be used. Those are just examples, and they're not a final technology selection. They're just intended to provide a basis for the impact analysis that's presented in the rest of the application. I don't know, Chris, if you want to say anything else about that.
Yeah, no, just that, yeah, we will kind of, again, we're looking at really the test case. And so we do appreciate that you all provided kind of specific examples, particularly for measuring, you know, like how much panels might weigh, if you pick a good example like that. But the department and the permit will not be vendor specific. So we're not holding the applicant to any particular vendor as long as you're selecting a vendor that has you know, complied with the applicable Unwriter laboratory standards for fire safety and things like that. So yeah, we, again, you know, I think what's in the application is really representative of what is kind of the most impact scenario. I would say worst case, because, you know, I think big facility is not necessarily the worst case, but most impactful configuration of the facility. And it's not meant to be binding, at least that's how we view it.
Got it. Thank you so much for your time and good luck.
Thank you. And I'll just say I probably did misspeak when I said Zinc Air, so apologies for that. But Zinc Hybrid is correct in terms of what we've described in the application and what the EOS example would reflect.
And Mr. Henry, I'll just ask, we probably got your contact information when you logged into WebEx. Would you like us to share that with the applicant team? Oh.
Hi, yeah, sorry, I was muted. Yeah, that's fine. I'm actually an investor in the company. So yeah, I'd love to have a conversation with someone offline about the opportunity for the battery side project. So thank you.
Okay, yeah, we'll make sure you can get in touch.
Thanks.
Great. Any other hands online? Okay, well, I'll give one last call for comments in the room or online. If anybody wants to raise their hand, you're more than welcome. And not seeing anybody, I'll just say thanks to everybody for coming out tonight. I hope this was helpful, and we will at least be around for a little bit. I'm assuming you all can stick around for just a few minutes if people want to chat afterwards. So.
We sure will. Thank you, Chris. And to all the folks that are on the line who didn't ask a question, please do find a way to get in touch with us. And we'd love to keep a conversation going if you do have any questions going forward.
Great. Yeah. And my contact information is on the screen now. So if you email me, I'm happy to pass messages along to the applicant team. Like I said, I think both my contact information and Logan's information or email address at least are on our project page. And I'm sure you can find Pine Gate Renewables online as well. So. All right. Oh,
Do we know how many people are online? We have like
21 online.
Curious.
All right. Thanks again, everyone. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks.